Hello, and welcome. Come, find a comfortable place. Let the world around you slow down. Let the noise of the day fade into a distant hum, like the tide receding from the shore. Perhaps you are resting your head on a cool pillow, or perhaps you are sitting in a favorite chair, watching the shadows lengthen across the floor. Wherever you are, let your shoulders drop, unclench your jaw, take a deep, slow breath in, and let it out, pushing away the tension, pushing away the worry. Tonight, we are going to drift. We are going to let our minds float free from the anchor of the earth, rising up, higher and higher, until the physical world is just a speck beneath us. We are traveling to a place of infinite silence, a place of silver light and endless drifting mists. We are going to the Astral Plane. We are going to the Astral Plane. It is a cold, drifting void, a realm where time does not flow like a river, but stands still like a frozen lake. Here, in this silver sea, there is no hunger, there is no thirst, there is only thought and memory and the vast, terrifying beauty of forever. And in this cold, drifting void, a queen is held in both great reverence and fear, above all others. Her name is Vlaakith. Specifically, she is Vlaakith the 157, the Lich Queen of the Githyanki. To her followers, the Githyanki, she is more than just a ruler. She is the bedrock of their existence. To them, she is both salvation and an iron justice. She is the immortal hand that keeps them great, the unmoving point around which their entire civilization turns. But as we drift through this lore, peering through the mists, we must understand that Vlaakith's rule is a blade with two edges. The same power that shields her people from the horrors of the cosmos is the chain that binds them. Her followers, the Githyanki, are legendary. They are among Dungeons and Dragons' strongest warriors and conquerors. They sail the astral winds on great ships. They ride red dragons that breathe fire into the void. But they are only as powerful as she permits. In the Queen's shadow, greatness is a cage. And loyalty is a shackle that tightens with each breath. But to understand this Queen, to understand the Lich who sits upon a throne of bone and obsession, we cannot start with her. We cannot even start in this era. We must drift back through the currents of time, back before the Githyanki had a name, back before the Queen had a crown. To understand the story of Vlaakith, we first must understand the origins of the Githyanki. Let your mind wander back to a time before most of the prime worlds known today were even born. This was an era of silence, an era where the stars looked down upon a galaxy held in a grip of terror. In this ancient epoch, the Illithids, or Mind Flayers, held an ancient empire. We think of Mind Flayers now as monsters lurking in the dark corners of the Underdark, isolated horrors, but then, they were the masters of everything. The great empire stretched throughout many prime worlds. It was a dominion that infested both the astral and ethereal planes. It was a stain that spread across reality, threatening the borders of many of the outer planes. Imagine the silence of that empire, a billion minds, all screaming, all silenced by the crushing psychic weight of their masters. This Mind Flayer dominion was so powerful that vast planet armies marshaled to defend their respective realms. The forces of law and chaos, of good and evil, all looked at the rising tide of the Illithids and felt a chill in their immortal hearts. Even the fiends, the demons and the devils who fight the eternal blood war, paused. Think of that. A war that has raged since the dawn of time, a war of infinite hatred, paused long enough to determine if the Illithids would attack the lower planes as well. In Dalkal, despite the fact that most tomes of historical lore make no mention of it, never has there been a time since then that the entire multiverse has been so vexed by a singular threat. It was a time of absolute dread. Salvation, when it finally came, did not come from without. It did not come from the gods descending in chariots of fire. It did not come from the armies of angels. Salvation came from within. For the Illithids, in their hubris, had enslaved all of the humans that they had come upon. These were the ancestors of the Githyanki. The Mind Flayers used them as beasts of burden and livestock upon which to feed. Let us dwell on that for a moment. To be livestock, to be bred not for your mind or your spirit, but for the meat of your brain and the labor of your back. These slaves were without number. They filled the pens and the pits of the Mind Flayer cities. Many were actually descendants of those who had originally been conquered. They had been born into chains. They knew no life beyond Mind Flayer enslavement, nor did their parents before them. Imagine a world where you have no history. You have no stories of a time before the whips. You have no concept of a sun that shines for you. There is only the violet darkness of the Illithid caverns, the slick alien architecture, and the constant, throbbing pressure of a master's mind pressing against your own. In slavery and other unspeakable influences of the Illithids twisted these wretches. It twisted them in form as well as spirit. The people who would become the Githyanki were changed. Their skin yellowed and hardened. Their limbs grew long and gaunt. They became reflections of the nightmare they lived in. But deep down, buried under layers of psychic conditioning and despair, there was still a spark. Many still clung to the ever-present need for freedom. It is the nature of the sentient mind to seek liberty. Even in the deepest dark, the soul yearns for the light. Slave revolts clawed at the Illithid Empire. Imagine these early uprisings. Desperate, starving people, picking up stones or shards of glass, throwing themselves at creatures that could dominate a mind with a glance. They fought, they died, they clawed at the walls of their prison. But they never opposed a true threat. It is a tragic realization. What hope did poorly armed, malnourished slaves have against the awesome mental powers of their Illithid masters? The Mind Flayers were gods of the mind. They could sense rebellion before it was spoken. They could turn brother against brother with a thought. A physical revolt against a psychic enemy is like trying to fight the ocean with a sword. The water simply swallows you. Inno, ao, sithal, idea, out traum, ispezi. The slaves began to understand this. In the quiet moments, in the dark, whispered conversations where the masters could not hear, they realized the truth. The slaves knew that only through development of their own psionic powers, coupled with martial strength, would they ever emerge victorious. They had to change. They had to evolve. They had to take the weapons of their enemy, the power of the mind, and make it their own. They had to sharpen their wills until they were as hard as steel. And from that number of slaves, from that mass of suffering and desperate humanity, arose a singular champion. Arose a singular champion. She was not a god. She was a slave like them. But she was greater in mental strength and resolve and hatred than any of her peers. Her hatred was a cold, burning star. Her resolve was a mountain that could not be moved. Her name was Gith. This is where the story truly begins. Not with a crown, but with a name whispered in the dark. Gith, a name that would become a rallying cry, a name that would burn down an empire. But that is a story for our next chapter. For now, simply drift in this space. Feel the silence of the void. The chains are still tight. The Mind Flayers still rule. But in the darkness, a fire has been lit. A fire has been lit. We will rest here, suspended in the moment before the revolution, in the moment before the breaking of the world. Would you like me to continue the tale and speak of the mother of rebellion and the great splitting of the people? In the silence of the astral void, where time is but a distant memory, we must look back to the moment the silence was broken. We left the ancestors of the Githyanki in the deepest of pits, suffocating under the psychic weight of the Illithid Empire. But in that darkness, a fire was kindled. From that number of slaves arose a singular champion. Let us drift into the presence of this figure. Imagine her not just as a warrior of flesh and blood, but as a titan of will. Her name was Gith. She was greater in mental strength and resolve and hatred than any of her peers. While others crumbled under the mental lashes of the Mind Flayers, Gith hardened. While others forgot their names, she carved hers into the walls of her mind. The slaves knew that only through the development of their own psionic powers, coupled with martial strength, would they ever emerge victorious. And Gith was the embodiment of this terrifying evolution. She was the first to truly sharpen her mind into a weapon that could cut through the domination of the elder brains. With her leadership at its crest, the wave of slaves washed over the Illithid Empire without mercy. Picture this moment. It was not merely a clash of swords against shields. It was a psychic eruption. Millions of minds, once isolated and afraid, suddenly united in a singular scream of defiance. The air itself would have shimmered with the force of it. The Nautiloid ships, those bioorganic horrors that darkened the skies of 1,000 worlds, fell burning from the heavens. The great cities of the Mind Flayers, built on the suffering of eons, cracked and crumbled. Not every Illithid was killed in this fight. The galaxy is vast, and the shadows are deep. The survivors fled into the Underdark of worlds, and the spaces between stars, but the ties of the Empire were broken. The lattice of control that had held the multiverse in a chokehold was shattered. The Mind Flayers would never completely recover. Into Del Sertu, the slaves were freed. Pause here for a moment. Let the concept of that freedom wash over you. For the first time in generations, perhaps for the first time in the existence of their species, they tasted the sweet nectar of liberty. They looked up and saw a sky that belonged to them. They heard their own thoughts echoing in their minds, unbidden by a master. It must have been a feeling of transcendent joy, a collective exhale that shook the cosmos. But history is rarely simple. and liberation is often followed by a new kind of struggle. Gith did not stop. Narnia Echiwantajion. Perhaps she could not stop when you have been forged in the fires of absolute hatred. Cooling down feels like dying. She ordered her people to continue their campaign to annihilate the Illithid. She wanted to hunt them to the very ends of existence, to ensure the nightmare could never return. This was a crusade born of trauma. This was a crusade born of trauma, a need for safety that could only be bought with blood. But then, the decree shifted. She ordered them to establish an empire of conquest of their own. Here lies the tragedy. The oppressed, having cast down the oppressor, sought to pick up the whip. Gith looked at the void left by the Mind Flayers and decided that her people should fill it. She did not want a garden of peace. She did not want a garden of peace. She wanted a fortress of power. But not all followed their command. There were those who looked at Gith and saw the shadow of the Illithids reflecting in her eyes. They saw that Gith was considered evil and would lead the people into darkness and tyranny. They had fought to break chains, not to forge new ones. And so, the people split. This is the story of the separation into the Githyanki, the children of Githyan, and the Githzerai, those who turned away. It was a schism of the soul, a tearing apart of a family that had just survived the apocalypse together. And thus comes Vlaakith into our story. But we must be precise. This is not quite the Vlaakith of the topic of this video. This is not the undead horror with emerald eyes who sits upon the throne today. This was her ancestor. This was Vlaakith I. In the wake of the rebellion, as the Githyanki established themselves in the virtually lifeless astral sea, a figure emerged from the ranks. A wizardesque woman came into view with the name of Vlaakith. She was not a warrior like Gith. She was something else, something colder, something more calculating. She began advising Gith in matters of state. Imagine the dynamic between them. Gith was the fire, the passion, the raw force of will that had broken an empire. Vlaakith was the ice, the intellect, the whisper that guided the hand, while Gith looked at the enemy in front of her. Vlaakith looked at the centuries ahead. She advised the ruler that the Githyanki were in need of allies. No, even with their newfound freedom and their psionic might, the Githyanki were vulnerable. They were refugees in a strange silver void. The multiverse was vast and hostile. Gith reluctantly agreed. They first looked to the chaos of Limbo. They tried to gain the help of the Sladi, Limbo's native race. But the Sladi are creatures of pure anarchy, shifting and changing like a fever dream. They cannot be bound by treaties or martial discipline. And so, the Githyanki failed. It was a dangerous moment. A new empire, isolated, with enemies lurking in the dark. Vlaakith then advised Gith to descend into battle, to the 9 hells. Specifically, she advised her to meet with the legendary Tiamat. Why Tiamat, the queen of dragons, the chromatic dragon, the avaricious 5-headed goddess of destruction. Perhaps Vlaakith understood that to conquer the material planes, one needed the ultimate predator. Or perhaps she knew that Tiamat trapped in the hells, desired agents who could move freely through the astral plane. No one knows exactly what happened at that meeting between Vlaakith and Tiamat. The records are sealed, or perhaps they were burned away by dragonfire. But we know the result. Vlaakith surely struck some sort of deal. Go. The red dragons, the fiercest and most arrogant of all chromatic kin, would go to help the Githyanki. This is the origin of the Knights of the Silver Sword, riding upon red dragons. It is an alliance that defies logics. Dragons do not serve humanoids. Yet, for the Githyanki, they make an exception. It was a pact forged in hellfire. But there was a price. Gith herself would never return. Undead Queen, the savior, the champion, the mother of the rebellion. She walked into the 9 hells to secure the future of her people, and the hells swallowed her whole. Did she sacrifice herself? Was she betrayed? Was she imprisoned as collateral for the dragon's service? The leader of the Githyanki was gone. The only thing that is known is that Vlaakith was named Gith's successor. Imagine the scene. The great warrior is gone. The people are confused, frightened. And there stands the advisor, the wizard, the one who whispered the plan. She steps out of the shadows and takes the mantle. She was to carry on her legacy of conquest, for Gith would not be returning. This was Vlaakith, the first, the architect of the Dragon Alliance, the first queen, and her descendants have always ruled the Githyanki since. It was the beginning of a dynasty, a line of queens, all bearing the same name, all carrying the same heavy crown. They served their terms, guiding the people through the ages, maintaining the pact with the dragons, and then they died. They passed on their name and legacy as well as leadership of the Githyanki people. Cycle after cycle, queen after queen, for thousands of years, until we reach the 157th iteration. Our story of the Lich Queen does not truly begin until this moment. The moment the cycle was broken. The moment the crown stopped passing down and started to rot on the brow of a single eternal ruler. Queen Vlaakith, the 157th. She is called the Lich Queen by Githyanki, for that is exactly what she is. She has ruled her people for thousands of years, with no end in sight. Think of the stagnation. Think of the silence of a reign that never changes. All the previous predecessors named Vlaakith were unlike her. They accepted mortality. They accepted that they were stewards of Gith's dream. But this Vlaakith, our Vlaakith, she is a Lich. She has no heirs, and in her undead state is unable to produce any. The biological line stops with her. The blood of the first advisor, which flowed through 156 generations, has coagulated in her cold veins. Should this Lich Queen be destroyed, this unsold bloodline of Vlaakith will die with her. Nay, why did she do it? Why did she break the sacred tradition of succession? There was something different about Vlaakith. She liked power, like all Githyanki, but her hunger was different. It was voracious. It was paranoid. She didn't see herself as holding the throne for Gith. She didn't see herself as a placeholder for a returning Messiah or a steward for the next generation. Rather, she saw the throne as hers. It belonged to her, not to the people, not to the memory of Gith, to her. And she was not about to give it up to a less worthy heir. And so, not long into her reign, she performed the Lich transformation ritual. Imagine the horror of that ritual. The Githyanki value physical perfection, martial prowess, the vitality of the living body, and their queen chose to become a corpse. She chose to embrace the very antithesis of life, to ensure that her grip on the throne would never slip. She traded her soul for an eternity of rule. Eternity of rule. And now, she sits in the timeless void, a creature of bone and magic, watching over a people she has enslaved, not with chains, but with loyalty. But what does she look like, this eternal tyrant? If you were to stand before her in the great palace of Tunaroth, what would you see? Drift with me a little closer. Let us peer through the gloom of the palace. Let us look upon the face of the Lich Queen. But that is a vision for the next chapter. No. Part 3. The Anatomy of the Undead Queen. Hello, and welcome back. The mists of the astral plane are swirling around us. Can you feel the chill? It is not a cold that bites at the skin, like the winter wind. It is a cold that seeps into the spirit, a stillness that slows the beating of the heart. We have traveled far to get here. We have witnessed the birth of a rebellion in the slimiest pits of the Illithid Empire. We have seen the rise of Gith, the warrior who broke the chains. We have watched the first Vlaakith whisper into the ear of power, guiding her people into a pact with hellfire and dragons. And we have seen the lineage of queens, one after another, live and die, until now, until the chain broke, until the 157th queen decided that death was for other people. Now, we stand at the threshold of the present moment. We are no longer looking at the dusty scrolls of history. We are standing in the shadow of the throne itself. Prepare yourself. We are about to look upon the Lich Queen. In the vast, silent narrative of the Githyanki, beauty is often equated with lethality. A Githyanki warrior is beautiful in the way a sword is beautiful. Sharp, efficient, honed to a razor's edge, they value physical perfection, agility, the explosive power of muscle and psionic will. But Vlaakith has discarded these mortal vanities. If you were to stand before her, the first thing you would notice is the aura of wrongness. It is the smell of ozone and dust, the scent of a tomb that has been sealed for 1,000 years. She is hideous in appearance. Nawad. And do not look away. Let your mind paint the details. She resembles an age-blackened corpse. The skin that was once perhaps the yellow-green of her people has withered and darkened, pulling tight against the skull. It is the skin of something that has been preserved, dried out, like parchment stretched over a frame of iron. There is no breath in her chest. There is no pulse in her neck. She is a stillness in the center of the room. But then, the eyes, burning within that desiccated visage, are smoldering emerald eyes. Green fire, not the gentle green of a forest canopy, but the radioactive sickly green of necrotic magic. They do not blink. They do not water. They simply stare, piercing through the physical form of anyone who dares approach, weighing the value of their soul. Those eyes have seen empires rise and fall. They have watched generations of her own people be born, fight and die, while she remains unchanging. She does not wear the armor of a warrior. She has moved beyond the need for steel plates. She normally wears long purple robes with intricate embroidery. Purple, the color of royalty, the color of the bruising sky. The embroidery tells stories of conquest, of enemies crushed, of magic mastered. The threads shimmer in the astral light, perhaps woven with strands of silver, or the hair of captured celestials. Over these robes, she favors a black cloak with a silver star pattern woven into it. Think of the symbolism here. A black cloak, like the void of the astral plane itself, and the silver stars, perhaps they represent the worlds she intends to conquer, or perhaps they are a mockery of the material plane's night sky, a reminder of the worlds she watches from her timeless tower. When she moves, the cloak ripples like a shadow detaching itself from the wall. It creates the illusion that she is not entirely there, that she is part of the darkness itself. Upon her brow rests the weight of her office. It is marked by an elaborate headdress of gold and rubies. Gold, the metal that never tarnishes. Rubies, red as the blood of the dragons she commands. The contrast must be striking. The gleaming, precious metal against the withered, blackened skin of her face. It is a crown, not for the living, but for a preserved relic. It frames her face, accentuating the skeletal features, making her appear like a deity of death, enshrined in a temple of riches. But it is what she holds in her hand that should truly terrify you. In her skeletal grip, she clutches a golden scepter. This is not merely a rod of office. It is a conduit of ancient power. It is encrusted with yet more rubies, matching her crown. The gems pulse with a faint inner light, perhaps responding to the rhythmic, silent beat of her will. And it is topped with the head of a red dragon. This is not a carving. This is not a mere decoration. Legends say it was given to the original Vlaakith by Tiamat's red consort. Ephilomen, that is the name of the dragon consort. Think back to the pact we spoke of earlier, when Gith went to hell and never returned, when Vlaakith I struck the deal. This scepter was the seal. It is the physical manifestation of the alliance between the Githyanki and the red dragons. When the Lich Queen raises this scepter, she is not just commanding her people. She is invoking the authority of the Dragon Queen herself. It represents the fire that burns in the void. It represents the promise that the dragons will carry the Githyanki to war. To hold it is to hold the leash of monsters. And she has held it for so long. Other queens held it for a century, perhaps two, before passing it on. Vlaakith 157 has held it for thousands of years. The gold is likely worn smooth, where her dead fingers grip it. It has become an extension of her arm, an extension of her will. But her power does not rely solely on artifacts. Are an artifact. Even without the scepter, even without the crown, Vlaakith would be a force of cataclysmic potential. Her knowledge of arcane magic equals that of a conclave of archmages. Think of what that means. A single archmage can level a city. They can stop time. They can wish reality into new shapes. Vlaakith has had millennia to study. She has read tomes that have turned to dust in the hands of others. She has practiced spells that the universe has forgotten. Now, in the silence of her palace, she experiments. She weaves magic that would shatter the mind of a mortal wizard. She is a master of necromancy, of course, but also of divination, of evocation, of evocation, of transmutation. She understands the weave of magic better than she understands the hearts of her own people. And she is a Githyanki. The martial blood still flows, or rather, the martial memory still exists within her. Her combat skill matches the combined talents of hundreds of sword masters. Do not mistake her frailty for weakness. Do not think that because she is a spellcaster, she cannot kill you with a blade. She has the muscle memory of 1,000 years of warfare. She moves with a supernatural speed, driven by magic rather than sinew. If she were to draw a silver sword, she would be a blur of death. She is the perfect synthesis of the Githyanki ideal, the supreme Gish, the master of both sword and spell. And yet, despite this godlike power, despite the armies at her call, and the dragons that bow to her, she is afraid. There is a paranoia that rots her mind just as the Undead rots her body. She jealously guards her position. She trusts no one. She fears virtually everything and everyone. Imagine living like that. Imagine having the power to crush worlds, yet flinching at shadows. Her reaction to what she fears is to master or destroy it. There is no middle ground. There is no negotiation. If something threatens her, it must be annihilated. And this fear leads to the greatest mystery of all, the secret that every lich must keep. Where is her phylactery? As a lich, her soul is bound to an object. If her body is destroyed, she will simply reform near this object. To kill her permanently, one must find and destroy the phylactery. But nobody truly knows where her phylactery is hidden. Nobody knows even what it is. Is it the scepter? Is it a gem in her crown? Is it hidden in the deepest vault of the city? Or is it something more sinister? Some whisper that the city itself is her phylactery. Others say she has hidden it on a different plane entirely, guarded by beasts that sleep in the space between realities. This secret is the keystone of her immortality, and she guards it with a labyrinth of lies and magical misdirection. She dwells in the Astral Plane, in the Githyanki city of Tunarath. This is her domain. This is her web. And it is to this city that we must turn our gaze next. For to understand the Queen, you must understand the throne she sits upon. You must understand the geography of her madness. Tunarath is not built on stone. It is not built on land. It is built on the corpse of a god. Let the image of the Lich Queen fade for a moment. The emerald eyes, the black cloak, the dragon's scepter. Let her recede into the darkness of her palace. Prepare yourself to step out onto the streets of the most important and largest Githyanki community. A city of over 10,000 souls, all living on the flesh of a dead deity. The silence of the void is about to be broken by the sounds of a city that drifts through forever. Let the image of the Lich Queen's emerald eyes fade into the mist for a moment. We have looked upon the horror of the present, but to truly understand the depth of that horror, we must understand what was lost. We must understand the long, silver ribbon of time that stretches back before the undeath, before the rotting flesh, before the paranoia. Adjust your position if you need to. Feel the support beneath you. Let the silence of the room wrap around you like a soft, heavy cloak. We are going to drift backward now. We are going to let the current of history carry us upstream, away from the stagnant pool of the Lich Queen's reign, and into the flowing river of her ancestors. We are going to speak of the dynasty of blood, India. And it is difficult for short-lived races, humans, halflings, even the stout dwarves, to comprehend the scale of Githyanki history. We measure dynasties in centuries. They measure them in arms, in the cold drifting void of the astral plane. Time is a suggestion, not a law. But even in a place without time, there is succession. There is the passing of the torch. Or at least, there was. To understand Vlaakith, the 157th, we must first honor the 156 women who came before her. Think of that number, 156. It begins, as we discussed, with Vlaakith I, the advisor, the wizard who stood in the shadow of Gith and whispered the words that would bind a people to the red dragons. When Gith vanished into the 9 hells, never to return, it was Vlaakith I who stepped forward. She was named Gith's successor. But note the specific weight of that word. Successor, not owner, not god. She was a steward. The throne she sat upon was not hers by right of conquest, but by right of trust. She was tasked with a single monumental duty, to carry on Gith's legacy of conquest. She was to hold the people together until Gith returned, for the Githyanki believed, and perhaps some still desperately believe, that Gith would return, that she would walk back out of the gates of battle, wreathed in dragonfire, to lead her people to the final victory. And so, Vlaakith I ruled. She organized the raids. She solidified the pact with Ephelimon and Tiamat. She built the foundations of the great city of Tunarath. And then, she died. She was mortal, powerful, yes, wise, certainly, but mortal. When her time came, she did not cling to the throne with necrotic claws. She did what a steward must do. She passed on her name and legacy as well as leadership of the Githyanki people. She chose an heir, a daughter, perhaps, or a protégé, selected for her ruthlessness and her psionic potential. This heir took the name Vlaakith. Vlaakith CLVII. And thus, a tradition was born. A dynasty not just of blood, but of identity. To be the queen was to be Vlaakith. It was to shed your own name and become the living symbol of the pact. All of the previous predecessors named Vlaakith were unlike the creature we know today. They were living, breathing Githyanki. They had blood that pumped through their veins. They felt the rush of battle and the fatigue of governance. They served their term. Imagine the weight of that service. For thousands of years, this line remained unbroken. Vlaakith X, Vlaakith the 50th, Vlaakith the 100th. Each one sat upon the throne in the astral void. Each one looked out at the silver sea and wondered, will Gith return in my lifetime? And when the answer was silence, they prepared the next generation. They ensured that the Githyanki remained strong, that the silver swords remained sharp, and that the hatred for the Mind Flayers never dimmed. They died, passing on the torch. It was a cycle of duty, a cycle of sacrifice. The individual queen mattered less than the continuity of the people. They were guardians of a dream, keeping the seat warm for the true savior. But came the 157th hour of Vlaakith. Let us drift into the mind of this specific Githyanki before she became a monster. She was born into the ultimate privilege. She was the heir to an empire that spanned the plains. She was raised in the hushed corridors of the Obsidian Palace, surrounded by the trophies of 1,000,000 worlds. Menoctis au purity, ishtiamin, itero, adamatunel. From a young age, there was something different about Vlaakith. She possessed the ambition that defines her race. Yes, she liked power like all Githyanki. But where her ancestors saw power as a tool to serve the memory of Gith, this Vlaakith saw power as an end in itself. She looked at the throne, that high seat made of bone and gold, and she did not see an empty chair waiting for a ghost. She didn't see herself as holding the throne for Gith. She saw it as hers. It is a subtle shift in psychology. Oh, but it is the crack that would eventually shatter the entire culture. She possessed a vanity that eclipsed her duty. Why should she be a steward? Why should she be a placeholder? Was she not powerful? Was she not a master of the arcane? Was she not the greatest mind her people had produced in eons? She was not about to give it up to a less worthy heir. And in her eyes, everyone was less worthy. To name an heir is to admit that you will end. To train a successor is to acknowledge that someone else could do your job. Vlaakith 157 could not abide this thought, the idea of another sitting on her throne. And Nishidal, it is to so, Amain, Evelnair, wearing her crown, wielding her scepter. It was unacceptable to her, and so the cycle stopped. The wheel of history, which had turned smoothly for thousands of years, ground to a halt. She made a choice that would damn her and potentially doom her entire race. She decided that she would not serve her term and die. She decided she would never die. Not long into her reign, she performed the Lich transformation ritual. At that time, Sio, Indipua, Addedatiri, Liuntiu. Let us pause and consider the gravity of this act. No, Lichdom is not merely a magical spell. It is a violation of the natural order. It is a ritual of unspeakable evil. It requires the severance of the soul from the body. It requires the consumption of life to fuel an eternal stagnant existence. For a Githyanki, who prides themselves on the perfection of the physical form, on the elegance of the sword stroke and the speed of the strike, to become a withered, rotting corpse, it is a madness. It is a rejection of everything her people value. But she did it. She drank the potion of poison and darkness. She let her heart stop beating. She let the blood settle in her veins. she let the cold of the grave take her, and she rose again, not as a Githyanki but as a lich. The consequences of this decision are catastrophic, though they may not have seemed so at the time. By becoming a lich, she sterilized the royal line. She has no heirs. In her undead state, she is unable to produce any. The biology of the living is lost to her. She can create undead servitors, she can summon demons, she can construct golems, but she cannot create a child, she cannot create a successor. This means that the bloodline of Vlaakith, the bloodline that dates back to the original advisor, the bloodline that walked with Gith, ends with her. Should this Lich Queen be destroyed, this eons-old bloodline of Vlaakith will die with her. No. It is a precarious precipice upon which the Githyanki now stand. For 156 generations, there was a safety net. If a queen fell in battle, there was a daughter. If a queen grew old, there was a princess. Now, there is only the lich. If she falls, there is no one. There is no legitimate claim. There is no designated heir. There is only a void that will be filled with civil war and chaos. But Vlaakith does not care. Or if she cares only enough to ensure she never falls. This transition from queen to lich, Queen changed the very fabric of Githyanki society, even if the common people did not realize it immediately. When she first came to power, she was much like her predecessors. She was ambitious, cunning, and committed to the eternal crusade. The people cheered for her. They saw a strong leader who would bring them glory. But as the centuries turned into millennia, the rot set in. Not just the rot of her flesh, but the rot of her purpose. She is the first Vlaakith that has lost sight of Gith's goals. Nitin, Gianakan, Isais. Think about that betrayal. The entire reason for the Githyanki's existence, the entire justification for their martial culture, is the crusade against the Illithids and the preparation for Gith's return. But Vlaakith no longer holds the interest of the Githyanki in her heart. She is selfish, she is paranoid, she is undeserving of her people's loyalty. She has become a parasite upon her own empire. She feeds on their devotion, she feeds on their souls, a topic we will explore in the dark chambers of her ascension rituals soon. And she gives nothing back but the illusion of order. The breaking of the cycle was not just a political maneuver, it was a spiritual death for the Githyanki leadership. The connection to the living, breathing struggle of the people was severed. A lich does not need food. A lich does not need sleep. A lich does not understand the fear of a mother for her child or the passion of a lover. She has removed herself from the Githyanki experience. And yet, she demands their absolute worship. Oh, help! She has constructed a lie so vast that it encompasses the entire astral plane. She has taught them that her immortality is their strength. She has taught them that without her, they are nothing. Without her, they believe they couldn't survive. They'd risk the chance of enslavement by another race once again. She uses their trauma, their ancient fear of the Mind Flayers, to bind them to her. She presents herself as the only shield strong enough to hold back the dark. Look at me. She seems to say, I have conquered death itself. Who else can protect you? It is a masterstroke of manipulation. Niao, Ao. And so, the Githyanki serve. They serve a corpse on a throne of lies, They serve a queen who ended the dynasty to save herself. As we drift here, contemplating this broken chain, we must wonder, does she remember what it was like to be alive? Does she remember the warmth of the sun, or the taste of wine? Or has the hunger of the lich consumed even those memories? She sits in her palace, the last of her name, the end of the line, and she watches. But what is she watching over? And you? To understand the scope of her dominion, we must leave the history books and travel to the geography of her power. We must go to the place where she dwells. We must go to the city that is not a city, but a grave. We must go to Tunarath. Maine. The mists are clearing now. Ahead in the silver void, a shape is emerging, massive, imposing, terrifying. The mists of the astral plane are parting. We have spent much time in the dark, intimate corners of history, examining the bloodline of queens and the rotting visage of the lich herself. We have looked into her emerald eyes and seen the paranoia festering there. But now we must pull back. We must drift away from the throne room, through the heavy obsidian doors, out past the guards with their silver swords, and into the pale, silvery light of the void. Adjust your blanket. Let the silence of the room settle around you. We are about to approach a sight that defies the laws of nature and the comprehension of the same. We are approaching the capital. Imagine you are floating in the astral sea. There is no up or down here, only the endless silver drift. In the distance you see a shape. At first it looks like an asteroid, a jagged rock tumbling through forever. But as you drift closer, the shape resolves itself. It is not a rock, it is a body. We are arriving at Tunarath. This is the largest and greatest Githyanki city in any dimension. It is the beating heart of their empire, the fist of Vlaakith clenching the void. But you must understand, this is not some regular city built on land. It does not sit upon a tectonic plate. It does not have roots in the soil. Tunarath is built upon the petrified body of an unnamed dead god. Let your mind construct this image. A deity, vast beyond measure, floating in the nothingness. It died eons ago, perhaps killed by other gods, perhaps slain by something even older, and its corpse has calcified into stone. It is a husk of divinity, a monument to the death of the divine. The husk upon which Tunarath is built appears vaguely humanoid. It has a head, an elongated body, and 6 radiating arms. 6 arms, splayed out into the void like a star. Can you see them? Enormous limbs of grey stone, kilometers long, fingers curled in a final rigor mortis. The city crawls across this corpse like moss on a fallen tree. It clings to the back. It wraps around the ribs. It spirals up the limbs. The scale is difficult to grasp to the inhabitants. The curve of the god's shoulder is a mountain range. The valley between the shoulder blades is a great plaza. The fingers are peninsulas jutting out into the astral sky. As we drift closer, you might wonder, how does one walk on a god floating in zero gravity? The astral plane typically has no gravity. One moves by the power of the mind. But here, on the corpse, the rules change. Subjective directional gravity holds sway within 200 feet of the husk. This means that as you approach the dead god, You are suddenly caught in its pull. The down becomes the surface of the god. Whether you are standing on its chest, its back, or the underside of its arm, gravity anchors you to the stone. This allows the city's inhabitants to walk normally. It creates a disorienting, Escher-like geometry. You could stand on the god's chest and look up to see a Githyanki warrior walking upside down on one of the radiating arms above you. Both of you feel secure. Both of you feel down is beneath your feet. Yet, you are perpendicular to one another. It is a city of impossible angles, held together by the lingering mass of the divine corpse. The city itself contains a population of over 10,000. 10,000 souls living on a graveyard. But it is not a quiet graveyard. It is a fortress. Simply put, Tunarath is a militaristic Githyanki fortress, flying through the astral sea. As we glide over the surface, look at the architecture. It is severe, it is brutal, it is designed for war. The skyline is dominated by protruding wrought iron spikes. They jut out from the towers and battlements, aggressive and sharp, like the quills of a porcupine. They serve as defenses against the great astral whales or the psionic ships of the Mind Flayers. But they also serve as a statement. Do not touch. Yet, there is beauty here, of a cold and terrible kind. There is enough decor to make them more than cold assemblages of stone and iron. Yan Chao, Dan Tainan. The Githyanki are not savages. They are an ancient civilization with a deep, if twisted, appreciation for art. Skillfully wrought carvings of Githyanki champions and battle scenes adorn the outer walls. Look closely at the masonry. There, carved into the stone of a guard tower, is a relief of Gith herself, sword raised, striking down a mind flare. On another wall, a scene of red dragons burning a world to ash. These carvings are not just decoration, they are propaganda. They are history chiseled into the rock to remind every citizen of who they are and who they hate. The most public and civic buildings display these carvings proudly. The inner and outer walls are of superior masonry, built to withstand siege and time. The Githyanki are master craftsmen, and their capital is built to last forever. As we move through the streets, notice the ground beneath your feet. In some places it is the raw, petrified flesh of the god, but in the civilized areas, the ground floors are made of smooth stones. In other districts, perhaps the residential zones or the barracks, the floors are sometimes covered with wooden planks, likely imported from the material plane, as wood does not grow here. The city is divided by the anatomy of the god. The arms, those 6 great radiating limbs, serve a specific purpose. The city contains a series of mooring towers and landing platforms on the head, spikes and arms of the island. These are the docks. Imagine the scene. Great astral skiffs, with their silver sails catching the psychic winds, gliding in to dock on the fingertips of a dead god. Red dragons, massive and terrifying, swoop down to land on the platforms built upon the god's forearms. Nyan, Ishchindi. This is the lifeline of the empire. From these arms, the raiding parties launch. From these arms, they return with the spoils of 1,000 worlds, gold, magic items, slaves, and the severed heads of their enemies. The arms of the god, once perhaps used to bless or heal, are now the launching pads for invasion. Oh, and where does the queen dwell? We must travel up the spine of the god, past the military districts that cling to the torso, past the merchant quarters where plunder is traded. We must go to the head. The Lich Queen dwells in Susurrus. Susurrus, a word that means a whispering or rustling sound, a fitting name for a palace of secrets. It is an immense obsidian palace. Inedal, Indown, it is Nistaudi. Black glass, sharp, reflective, and impenetrable. It rises from the forehead of the dead god's shape. Think of the symbolism. She sits on the mind of the god. She occupies the seat of intellect, dominating the dead thought with her living will. The palace towers over the rest of the city, a black shard piercing the silver sky. Right in front of the palace, standing guard like an eternal sentinel, is a great obsidian statue of Gith. It stands overlooking the city. The statue is likely larger than life, carved from the same volcanic glass as the palace. Gith, the liberator, looking out over the empire she forged. But notice where she stands. She is outside. Vlaakith is inside. Gith is the figurehead, the statue, the memory. Vlaakith is the occupant, the power, the reality. Vlaakith, of course, dwells in the palace alone. Well, perhaps not entirely alone. She is surrounded by her guards, her servants, and her undead constructs. But she is alone in her power. No other Githyanki dwells in the inner sanctum of Susurrus. It is her domain, her phylactery of stone and silence. Wow, and silence. The atmosphere of Tunarath is unlike any city on the material plane. How? Because it is in the astral plane. There is no day or night here. There is only the eternal silvery twilight. The light comes from everywhere and nowhere. There are no shadows, or rather, the shadows are strange and fleeting. There is no need for street lamps, though the Githyanki likely burn magical torches or drift globes for aesthetic and status. The city never truly sleeps, for in the astral plane, sleep is not a biological necessity in the same way. Creatures here do not hunger, they do not thirst, and they do not age. This timelessness permeates the stone. The buildings do not weather. The iron spikes do not rust. The statue of Gith looks as sharp today as it did the day it was carved. Tunarath is a snapshot of war preserved in amber. But do not mistake this preservation for peace. The city hums with a low, menacing energy. If you were to walk the streets, you would hear the ringing of smith hammers repairing armor. You would hear the harsh, guttural language of the Githyanki barking orders. You would hear the screech of dragons overhead. You would see the Githyanki training. They are always training. In the plazas and the courtyards, warriors practice with their silver swords, moving in blurring katas that defy gravity. They run up the walls of the god's ribs. They leap from spire to spire. The city is a gymnasium of war. And beneath it all, beneath the stone and the wood and the iron, is the dead god. Does it dream? Does some spark of divinity remain in the petrified flesh? Some rumors say that the Lich Queen chose this spot, not just for its strategic value, but for its power. We know that her recent attempts to achieve godhood utilize the latent power of the dead god that empowers Tunarath. She is essentially mining the corpse for divinity. She is siphoning the residual energy of the one in the void to fuel her own apotheosis. It is a parasitic relationship of the highest order. She lives on its skin, and she eats its spirit. The city is, in many ways, a battery. a battery that the Lich Queen is slowly draining. As you drift through the Mithril district, or gaze up at the citadel of the void, you can feel the weight of this blasphemy. The Githyanki, who hate the Mind Flayers for enslaving them, have enslaved a god. They have turned a divine being into a piece of real estate. It is a city of contradictions. It is beautiful and hideous. It is a sanctuary and a prison. It is a place of eternal life through the timelessness of the astral and eternal death, built on a corpse, ruled by a lich. And the people who live here, the 10,000 souls who call this rock home, they are the children of the void. They have grown up knowing that ground is the skin of a deity, and sky is the silver sea. They have grown up in the shadow of the obsidian palace, under the gaze of the emerald eyes. Under the gaze of the emerald eyes. They are comfortable here. This is their normal. To them, a world with a sun and a moon, a world where the ground is just dirt, is the alien place. Tunarath is the center of the universe. But life in Tunarath is not just about geography. It is about the culture that flourishes or festers within these walls. It is about the martial code. It is about the decadence that creeps in when you have forever to live and nothing to do but kill. As we stand on the precipice of the god's forehead, looking down at the sprawling fortress city, we must ask, what is it like to live under the rule of the Lich Queen? What is the daily existence of a Githyanki warrior in this timeless city? We have seen the stage. Now we must meet the actors. The city is silent for a moment. The dragons have roosted. The training yards are quiet. The only sound is the susurrus of the astral wind blowing through the iron spikes. Are you ready to descend into the streets and walk among the people of the silver sword? The silence of the astral void is heavy, isn't it? It presses against the eardrums, a physical weight in a place where gravity is merely a suggestion. We have walked the petrified skin of the dead god. We have looked up at the obsidian shard of Susurrus, where the Lich Queen sits in her eternal vigil. But a city, even one built on a corpse, is nothing without its people. Come, let us step off the main thoroughfares of Tunarath. Let us move away from the silent brooding statues and step into the training yards. Let us listen not to the silence, but to the song of the Githyanki soul. Swing. Can you hear it? The singing of metal, cutting through the air. The distinct, high-pitched hum of a silver sword vibrating with psionic energy. To understand the subjects of the Lich Queen, you must understand the blade. For a Githyanki, the sword is not merely a tool of war. It is a limb. It is a philosophy. It is the only truth they know in a universe of lies. We are entering the culture of the silver sword. Life in the astral plane is a paradox. It is a realm of the mind, yet the Githyanki are creatures of the flesh. They were bred by the Mind Flayers to be strong, to be durable, to be weapons, and when they broke their chains, they did not lay down their arms. They sharpened them. The people here, the citizens of Tunarath, live an existence that is alien to you and me. In the timeless realm of the astral plane, they can ignore the need for food, water, and other mundane concerns that plague lesser races. Think about what that does to a society. Imagine never feeling the pang of hunger. Imagine never feeling the dryness of thirst. Imagine never feeling the ache of old age in your joints. You are frozen in your prime, a statue of flesh that never weathers. This timelessness shapes every aspect of their culture. It allows them to pursue perfection with a single-minded obsession. A human master swordsman has perhaps 40 good years to perfect his art before his body fails him. A Githyanki warrior has eternity. They practice the same cut, the same parry, the same thrust. For centuries, they refine the art of killing until it is as natural as breathing. But this perfection comes with a cold detachment, because they do not suffer the petty indignities of survival. The farming, the hunting, the cooking, they have lost touch with the softness of life. They are hard, like the silver swords they wield. And guiding this hardness, channeling it like a river of steel, is the will of Vlaakith. Upon cementing her position as the supreme ruler, she laid out a grand proclamation that defined the Githyanki's all-encompassing mission. She knew that a people bred for war needed a war to fight. If they stopped fighting, they might start thinking. And if they started thinking, they might look at the Lich on the throne and wonder why she is still there. So, she gave them a purpose, a forceful commander to spur them on. Vlaakith decreed that having defeated the Mind Flayers, the Githyanki would take the place of the Illithid as sovereigns of the material plane. This is the core of their arrogance. They do not see themselves as merely free. They see themselves as the rightful heirs to the universe. The Mind Flayers were the old masters. The Githyanki are the new ones. They replace one tyranny with another, believing that because they suffered, they have earned the right to inflict suffering. She declared that the many worlds of the material plane, worlds like Toril, Orth Eberron, would be the Githyanki's gardens. Gardens. Let that word sink in. They do not see your home as a nation or a civilization. They see it as a vegetable patch, a place primed for harvesting as they saw fit. When a Githyanki raiding party descends on a red dragon, burning a village and seizing its treasures, they do not see it as theft. They see it as reaping. They are the farmers of the multiverse. And you are the crop. The Astral Plane, she decreed, would be their home domain. It is the high castle from which they look down upon the gardens. It is the safe harbor where time cannot touch them. But this existence creates a strange dichotomy in the life of a Githyanki. Because they do not age in the astral plane, they cannot grow up there. A child born into Narath would remain a child forever, an eternal infant, and so we have the Kretches. Though not explicitly detailed in our primary text, the lore tells us that the Githyanki must lay their eggs and raise their young on the material plane. They must descend into the gardens to let their children mature in the flow of time. This is why Githyanki are found in hidden fortresses on terrestrial worlds. But once they reach maturity, once they are honed into weapons, they are called back to the void. They are called back to the city of the dead god to serve the queen, and their devotion to her is absolute. The Githyanki refer to this Vlaakith as the revered queen. Their adoration for her is as close as you get to actual worship. In a culture that generally despises gods, remember they live on the corpse of one. Vlaakith has managed to position herself as a deity in all but name. They see her as Gith's representative in all things. She is the link to the glorious past. Even though they know she is a Lich, her skeletal form is no secret. They still follow her because they don't particularly care. Why? Why would a race so obsessed with physical perfection follow a rotting corpse? Because of fear. Her word is law. Her word is truth. But beneath the loyalty lies a terrified pragmatism. Without her, they believe they couldn't survive. Deep in the Githyanki psyche, the trauma of the Mind Flayers still festers. They look at the chaos of the multiverse, at the lurking illithids, at the demons and the devils, and they feel small. They believe they'd risk the chance of enslavement by another race once again without her. She is the wall. She is the shield. She is the monster they keep to scare away the other monsters. With their fear of slavery so closely tied to the dependence upon their queen, it's not surprising that the loyalty of the Githyanki to the ruler is so fanatical. It is a brilliant, abusive relationship on a civilizational scale. "I am the only one who loves you," she whispers. "I am the only one who can keep you safe. If you leave me, the bad men will come back." But there is a crack in this armor of fanaticism. Long gone are the days when the Gith race was fully embroiled in conflict, in the times of Gith. In ancient days, survival was a daily struggle. Every Githyanki had to be alert every moment. But now they live in a fortress city that has not fallen in millennia. Now they have red dragons patrolling their skies. When the Githyanki settled to Narath and took up residence in the Astral Plane, they no longer had a reason to constantly fight for survival. And in that respect, the lives of all Githyanki became easier. Easier, a dangerous word for a warrior culture. Vlaakith's people are extremely devoted to her, but she does not share that devotion back to them. She sees them as tools, and she sees that her tools are beginning to rust. In a way, the Githyanki are victims of their own success. After centuries of staging lucrative raids at the multiverse, the folk of Tunarath have become spoiled and decadent. Walk through the upper districts of the city, away from the training yards. You will see the fruits of their harvesting, elaborate tapestries from elven kingdoms, gold and gems from dwarven vaults, magic items from the towers of archmages. They have everything, and they have earned none of it through creation, only through taking. Vlaakith can still summon her people to action, and when she does, they obey her willingly. The martial instinct is still there. When the horn blows, they are warriors again. But when they aren't otherwise occupied, when the raid is over and the loot is counted, many of the citizens of the city spend their time in self-indulgent activities. The lore hints at a dark, hedonistic underbelly to Tunarath. In a place where you never hunger or tire, what do you do for fun? You seek sensation. You seek new experiences to break the monotony of eternity. Art, dueling, arcane experiments, perhaps darker pleasures. Vlaakith sees this. She sees the indolence creeping in like a rot. So she addresses the problem by not dealing with it directly, but trying to encourage her indolent followers to find purpose in meaningful activities that don't involve plundering and killing. She tries to keep them busy, She creates bureaucracy. She mandates rituals. She invents new enemies or new reasons to patrol the void. But she is not always successful. And this puts Vlaakith in a very difficult, very paranoid position. She remains in a position where she is both trying to keep her people strong and sharp to reinforce her own power, but also she is terrified of them. She needs them to be strong enough to fight the Mind Flayers. She needs them to be strong enough to conquer the material plane. But she does not want them to be strong enough to challenge her. By ordering an increase in raids, she risks her best warriors becoming experienced and powerful enough to challenge her rule. Imagine the tightrope she walks. Every time she sends a commander out to conquer a world, that commander comes back stronger, more confident, more beloved by the troops. Every hero she creates is a potential rival. Also, if she sends out too many raiding parties at one time, the city of Tunarath might become compromised. She cannot leave her phylactery, or whatever she is guarding, undefended. And so, she holds her people back. She keeps them in a state of arrested development. She feeds them the lie of the garden to satisfy their greed. But she denies them the full war that might truly temper them. She lets them become spoiled and decadent, because a spoiled warrior is easier to control than a hungry one. And it is a culture of stagnation masked as glory. The silver swords are polished, but the hands that hold them are shackled by a queen who loves her throne more than her people. And for those who do manage to rise above the mediocrity, for those few Githyanki who resist the decadence, who master the blade and the mind, and become truly great, what happens to them? Vlaakith has a special reward for them, a promise of paradise. Nay, when you know, it shall stay. Vlaakith also proclaimed that Githyanki, who proved themselves skilled in battle, would ascend to an even greater paradise. This is the carrot she dangles before them. Serve me well, she says. Become strong. Become a legend. And I will grant you the ultimate reward. A long lifetime of service would earn any Githyanki a journey to the boundless delights of her innermost court. They believe that in this court, Gith herself awaits them. They believe it is a Valhalla, a heaven where the war is won and the heroes feast forever. But we know the truth, don't we? We have seen the emerald eyes. We know the hunger of the Lich. The culture of the silver sword is a funnel. It is designed to identify the strongest, the brightest, the most dangerous souls, and deliver them to the dinner table. As we stand here in the training yard, watching a young Githyanki practice a disarming strike, sweating and striving for perfection, we feel a pang of tragedy. He believes he is training to be a hero. He believes he is training to serve his people. He does not know that he is merely fattening himself up for the slaughter. Dagdi. The lie of the Ascension is the darkest secret in the multiverse, and it is there that we must travel next, into the inner sanctum, into the ritual chamber where the promise of paradise turns into a nightmare of consumption. Come, let us leave the noise of the training yards behind. The ringing of the silver swords has faded into the distance. The harsh shouts of the commanders are now just a murmur on the astral wind. We are moving inward, we are moving upward. We are approaching the steps of Sorceress, the palace of whispers. Find your stillness again. Let the tension in your shoulders drop. Let your breathing slow to the rhythm of a deep, dreamless sleep. We are about to walk into the most sacred and the most profane place in the entire multiverse. We have spoken of the culture of the Githyanki, a culture forged in fire, tempered by discipline, and driven by a singular burning ambition. Every young Githyanki, from the moment they hatch in the material plane, to the moment they strike their first Mind Flayer, dreams of one thing: Ascension. Ideal Eternidis. It is the golden thread that weaves through their harsh lives. It is the light at the end of the tunnel of eternal war. Vlaakith, in her calculated brilliance, proclaimed that Githyanki who proved themselves skilled in battle would ascend to an even greater paradise. Imagine the power of that promise. To a people who know only war, who know only the cold void and the blood of enemies, the idea of a paradise is intoxicating. It is not a heaven of harps and clouds. It is a warrior's heaven. She promised them a long lifetime of service would earn any Githyanki a journey to the boundless delights of her innermost court. The innermost court, the phrase itself suggests intimacy, exclusivity, and finality. It implies that there is a circle within the circle, a place where the true elite dwell. And the greatest lure of all, the wondrous realm that Gith discovered in her journeys, and where she awaited those who had proven themselves worthy. They believe Gith is there, the mother of rebellion, the savior. They believe that when they walk through those obsidian doors for the final time, they will be greeted by the woman who broke the chains of the Illithids. They believe they will sit at her right hand, sharing stories of glory, resting in the knowledge that their duty is finally done. This belief is the fuel that drives the Githyanki war machine. It is why they fight so hard. It is why they strive to become the strongest, the fastest, the most lethal. They are not just fighting for the Queen. They are fighting for their ticket home. But as we stand here, in the shadow of the palace, the air grows cold. The silence is not peaceful. It is hungry. Because we know the truth. Vlaakith's strength and immortality come at a heavy cost. Let us walk through the ritual. Let us imagine, for a moment, that you are a Githyanki champion. You have served for centuries. You have slain Mind Flayers in the depths of the Underdark. You have raided the treasuries of kings on the material plane. You are powerful. You have reached the pinnacle of what a Githyanki can achieve. You are a knight of the silver sword. Oh, perhaps even a supreme commander. And then, the summons comes. In the time since Vlaakith made this promise to her people, she has called many of the most formidable Githyanki warriors to the reward. You receive the call. It is the greatest honor of your life. Your peers look at you with envy. Your subordinates look at you with awe. He is going to the innermost court, they whisper. He is going to meet Gith. There is a grand ceremony. Indicue unto. But a grand ceremony. Picture it. The great plaza of Tunarath. Is filled with silent ranks of warriors. Banners of red and silver snap in the astral wind. Drums beat a slow, rhythmic cadence. You walk up the long obsidian stairs, your silver sword sheathed for the last time. The Lich Queen herself might appear on the balcony, her emerald eyes glowing, her skeletal hand raised in a benediction that looks suspiciously like a grasp. You feel a swelling in your chest, pride, relief, joy. You have made it. You have survived the infinite war. You reach the top of the stairs. The massive doors of the inner sanctum drift open silently. Inside, there is a purple light, thick and swirling. You step across the threshold. You step across the threshold. The doors close behind you. The sound of the drums is cut off instantly. You are alone. And then, the illusion shatters. And the supplicants enter her inner sanctum, and are never seen again. There is no garden. There is no banquet hall. There is no Gith waiting with open arms. There is only the Lich. Vlaakith is not sending these grand warriors to paradise. She is waiting for them, and she is hungry. Vlaakith drains their souls and absorbs their strength. The horror of this betrayal is difficult to articulate. It is not just murder. It is the consumption of the self. Everything that warrior was, their memories, their skills, their courage, their very essence, is ripped from their body. The ritual is likely agonizing, but brief. The Lich Queen uses necromancy of the highest order, magic that she has perfected over thousands of years. She creates a conduit between her withered form and the vibrant, powerful soul of the champion. She drinks them. She gains more power with every ascension. And think about the implications of this. She is not just sustaining her Undeath. She is growing stronger. She is stacking the power of generations of heroes on top of her own. Her knowledge of arcane magic equals that of a conclave of archmages. Why? Because she has likely consumed the souls of her greatest wizards called Gish. She has absorbed their study, their breakthroughs, their understanding of the weave. Her combat skill matches the combined talents of hundreds of swordmasters. Why? Because she has eaten the souls of her greatest generals, the muscle memory of 1,000 battles, the reflex to parry, the instinct to strike. The instinct to strike. It all flows into her. She is a composite monster. She is a legion contained within a single skeletal frame. When she speaks with the stolen voices of the dead. When she strikes with the stolen strength of the betrayed. This, of course, is a closely guarded secret. It is the foundational lie of her empire. If the Githyanki knew, if the common soldier in the barracks knew that ascension meant dinner, the rebellion would be instantaneous and total. The entire structure of their society would collapse. So why does she do it? We know that a lich must feed souls to their phylactery to survive. It is the curse of the undead state. Now, she devours and kills these Githyanki for two reasons. The first, of course, is to feed on their power to sustain herself. She is an eternal fire that needs constant fuel. And what better fuel than the high-quality, psionically potent souls of her own elite guard? A common soul might sustain her for a week. A champion soul might sustain her for a year. But the second reason is born of that cold, gnawing paranoia we spoke of earlier. She also does this to eliminate any potential future rivals. Kill. This is the tragedy of the Githyanki. In any other society, great heroes are celebrated. They become generals, advisors, kings. Their strength is added to the strength of the nation. But, under Vlaakith, greatness is a death sentence. Despite the widespread loyalty of her people, she is absolutely paranoid and occasionally delusional. She looks at a warrior who has reached the peak of power, let's say in game terms someone approaching level 16 or higher, and she does not see a valuable asset. She sees a threat. She sees someone who might one day realize that the queen is weak. She sees someone who might challenge her claim to the throne. She trusts no one. Hindi, Ayawan. So, she created a system that automatically culls the herd. The ascension is a filter. As soon as a Githyanki becomes too strong, too famous, or too influential, they are invited to the palace. It is a mechanism of control that ensures no one ever becomes powerful enough to overthrow her. She decapitates her own society, generation after generation. She keeps her people strong enough to be useful, but weak enough to be ruled. Her reaction to what she fears is to master or destroy it. In this case, she does both. She destroys the person, and she masters their power by absorbing it. It is a twisted, cannibalistic efficiency. As a result, nobody truly knows where her phylactery is hidden, or even what it is. By killing anyone who gets close to her inner circle, she ensures that her secrets die with them. The only people who enter the sanctum and see the truth are the ones who never leave. So, the Githyanki continue to strive. They continue to train. They continue to look up at the obsidian palace with longing in their hearts, dreaming of the day they will be worthy. It is a heartbreaking cycle. The mother eating her children, the general slaughtering her best soldiers. And as she sits there, bloated on the souls of the faithful, her madness only grows. The paranoia does not subside with power, it feeds on it. She spends her time in the Palace of Whispers, surrounded by the silence of the dead, plotting, watching, and waiting. But waiting for what? Besides coveting power and securing her own reign as eternal queen, why does Vlaakith care so much about keeping and maintaining power? She is not content with being merely a queen. She is not content with being merely a lich. She has a plan that goes beyond the boundaries of the astral plane, a plan that reaches for the divine. We have spoken of the dead god she lives upon. Now, we must speak of what she intends to do with it. We are moving from the horror of the betrayal to the audacity of the apotheosis. The air in the astral plane is usually still, a vacuum of eternal silence. But as we stand here, in the shadow of the obsidian palace, do you feel it? A vibration, a low, thrumming tremor that seems to come from deep within the stone of the dead god. It is not an earthquake. The astral plane has no tectonic plates. It is not the footfalls of a giant. It is the shivering of a mind. Come, find your center again. Let the tension of the previous chapter, the horror of the soul-draining ritual, dissipate just for a moment. Wrap yourself in the safety of the observer. We are here to watch, not to be judged. We are here to learn, not to be consumed. We have spoken of the Queen's power. We have spoken of her cruelty. But now, we must speak of her weakness. For all her arcane might, for all the armies at her command, Vlaakith represents a paradox common to tyrants. The more power she accumulates, the more fragile she feels. Each passing year sees Vlaakith's madness growing. Wow, and so, think on that. Madness is terrifying enough in a mortal who lives perhaps 80 years, but in a lich who has lived for thousands, madness is a geological force. It is a slow, grinding erosion of reality. Her mind, once sharp and calculating, is becoming a labyrinth of mirrors, filled with imagined enemies and whispered threats. She has withdrawn from public view. There was a time, in the early millennia of her reign, when she might have ridden at the head of her armies. There was a time when she might have sat upon the open balcony of Susurrus to receive the adulation of the crowds. But now she hides. She spends most of her time in her palace of whispers. The name itself, Susurrus, or the Palace of Whispers, tells you everything you need to know about her mental state. She is surrounded by silence, yet she hears voices. She is the absolute ruler, yet she feels besieged. In this isolation, she works dread magic. She is not sitting idly. She is weaving spells of such complexity and darkness that they bleed out into the city itself. The tremors we felt, they are real. She sends tremors to shake her own city in her stead. Imagine living in Tunarath. You are walking down the street, perhaps buying a new leather strap for your armor, and suddenly the ground beneath you, the very flesh of the dead god, lurches. Buildings sway. The iron spikes rattle. It is a reminder, a physical manifestation of the Queen's mood. I am here, the tremor says. I am angry. I am watching. It is psychological warfare, waged against her own people. Despite the widespread loyalty of her people, she is absolutely paranoid. She is occasionally delusional. She looks at her loyal subjects, the Githyanki who would die for her without hesitation, and she sees traitors. She sees knives in every shadow. She trusts no one, and fears virtually everything and everyone. And because she trusts no one, she cannot rule alone. She cannot be everywhere at once. She needs eyes. She needs ears. She needs hands that will strangle dissent before it can even draw breath. And so, she has unleashed the Sharai. Ciao. Let us drift through the twisting alleys of the city, away from the open plazas, into the places where the shadows cling a little tighter. Do you see them? Figures moving with a purposeful, terrifying silence. These are the Sharai. Fanatic mages and inquisitors, calling themselves the Sharia, move throughout the city. They are not the Knights of the Silver Sword. They are something else. They are the priesthood of the Lake. They are the enforcers of the new orthodoxy. While the knights revere Vlaakith as a great queen and commander, the Sharai have taken it a step further. They speak of the Lich Queen in terms more fitting for a god than an undead tyrant. Listen to their whispers as they pass. They do not say, "Obey the Queen." They say, "Worship the divine." They do not say, "Serve the empire." They say, "Feed the altar." They are planting the seeds of her apotheosis, her ascension to godhood. In the minds of the populace, they are rewriting the narrative of Githyanki society from a military hierarchy to a religious cult. And their methods are brutal. They are executing any they suspect of treachery. Note the word suspect. Proof is not required in the court of the paranoid. A glance that lingers too long, treachery. A hesitation when bowing to a statue of the Queen, treachery. A whispered question about why the great heroes never return from the inner sanctum, treachery. The Shurei descend like vultures. They are mages of significant power, twisted by the same dark energies that sustain their mistress. They drag the accused away, not to a jail, but to the dungeons beneath the obsidian palace. Or perhaps they simply immolate them in the street, a fiery example to anyone else who might be thinking dangerous thoughts. This is the reign of terror. It is the inevitable stage of any tyranny that lingers too long, the external enemies. The Mind Flayers are far away, so the enemy must be found within. But the Shurei are not the only horrors that stalk the streets of Tunarath under the Queen's blessing. There is something else, something that defies the very laws of nature and the ancient pacts of the Githyanki. Drift with me to the upper spires, near the roosts of the dragons. Look closely at the creatures perched there. We know the Githyanki ride red dragons. It is their signature mount, a bond forged by Tiamat. But dragons are dragons, and Githyanki are humanoids. They are allies, not kin. Yet, under Vlaakith's madness, the lines have blurred. Dragon, Githyanki, abominations, infest the city. Let your mind construct this monstrosity. A creature that is neither fully dragon nor fully Gith. Perhaps it has the scaled reptilian hide of a worm, but the humanoid shape of a Githyanki. Perhaps it has the leathery wings and the breathing of fire, but the psionic mind of a humanoid. These are twisted experiments, born of dark magic, and perhaps the Queen's own obsession with combining her two greatest assets, the arcane power of the dragons and the psionic potential of her people. In any other era, these things would be destroyed at birth. The Githyanki value purity of form. They despise mutation. Remember, their hatred of the Mind Flayers is partly because of how the Illithids warp the flesh. But these abominations? They are permitted to go wherever they please. They walk the streets of the capital with impunity. They push aside the true Githyanki warriors. They inhabit the best quarters. Why? Because they have the Lich Queen's blessing. Nayan. Injadi. Because they have the Lich Queen's blessing. They are thought to be her favorite subjects. Think of the insult this represents to the Githyanki people. A warrior trains for centuries to perfect their form, to master the silver sword, to serve the Queen. And then a mutated monstrosity shoves past them, and the warrior can do nothing. To strike the abomination is to strike the Queen. It is a test of loyalty. It is a degradation. Vlaakith is essentially saying, I can make monsters, and you will love them because I tell you to. This creates a terrible atmosphere in the city. The pride that once held the Githyanki together is fracturing. Unrest and outrage grows. You can feel it in the way the citizens look at the Shurei when their backs are turned. You can hear it in the silence that falls over a tavern when a patrol enters. It is a simmering, resentful heat. This atmosphere casts a terrible pall on the ancient city. The glory of Tunarath is fading. The carvings on the walls still depict heroic battles. But the streets are filled with fear. The gleaming armor of the knights reflects a city that is eating itself. Vlaakith's customs made her own throne secure. Yes, the paranoia works in the short term. By killing rivals, by empowering inquisitors, by terrifying the populace, she ensures that no one can organize a rebellion today. She is safe in her palace. Though it had profound consequences on the Eternal Crusade, the war effort, the very reason for their existence, is suffering. Eliminating the best and brightest Githyanki has a leveling effect on Githyanki society. Githyanki society. Think about it. If you kill all the tall poppies, you are left with a field of weeds. If you consume every genius strategist and every master swordsman, who is left to lead the armies? Few standouts exist among those who dwell in Tunarath. Well, the heroes are gone, the legends are dead. The ranking officials, the ones who manage the city, the ones who command the fleets, are not the brave or the brilliant. They are lickspittles and sycophants. They are the yes men. They are the ones who survived not by being strong, but by being subservient. They bow the lowest. They flatter the queen's vanity. They ignore the abominations. They report their neighbors to the Sharai. Corruption is rampant in the highest levels. Where there is fear, there is corruption. Officials take bribes to look the other way. Inquisitors settle personal grudges under the guise of hunting traitors. The efficiency of the Githyanki military machine is being gummed up by the slime of decay. Support for Gith's eternal crusade wanes. This is the ultimate tragedy. The fire that Gith lit, the burning desire to free the multiverse from the Illithids, is flickering out. The people are too tired, too scared, and too poorly led to care about the greater war. They are just trying to survive their own queen. Expeditions still set out from Tunarath, but fewer and fewer return with new Mind Flayer skulls. The ships go out, crewed by mediocre soldiers led by corrupt captains. They run into trouble. They fail, or perhaps they simply desert, finding it safer to live as pirates in the wild space than to return to the city of the dead god. Vlaakith, in her madness, is destroying the very thing she claims to protect. She is hollowing out her empire from the inside. And yet, she does not care about the crusade anymore. She does not care about the Mind Flayers. She has set her sights on something else. The Shai are not just keeping the peace. They are preparing the way. They are the heralds of a new age. The Lich Queen believes she has outgrown her throne. She believes she has outgrown her title. She looks at the dead god beneath her feet, and she does not see a foundation. She sees a battery. She sees a mirror. She wants to become what she is standing on. As the tremors shake the city again, and the Shari chant their dark liturgies in the plazas, we realize that the paranoia is just the symptom. The disease is ambition, infinite, consuming ambition. She is ready to take the final step, the step that will either elevate her to the heavens or tear the astral plane apart. She is preparing for apotheosis. The tremors have subsided for now. The city of Tunarath drifts silently once more through the silver void. The shouting of the Cherae Inquisitors has faded into the background noise of the astral plane. Come, return to your place of rest. Let the tension leave your muscles. Let the anxiety of the Queen's paranoia drift away like smoke in the wind. We are safe here, hovering just above the narrative, watching the gears of history turn. We have spoken of the Queen's hunger for souls. We have spoken of her fear of rivals. But these are merely the symptoms of a much deeper, much darker obsession. Deep within the obsidian walls of Susurrus, Vlaakith is not merely trying to survive, she is trying to evolve. Lich's goals don't vary too much, whether they were tyrants or scholars before they embraced the undeath. As soon as they go through the process of becoming a lich, the hunger simplifies. All they want is more power. For a normal lich, power might mean a new spell, a hidden artifact, or a kingdom of bones. But Vlaakith has all of that. She has ruled for millennia. She has mastered every spell in the Githyanki library. She commands dragons. So, for Vlaakith, the next obvious step is becoming a deity. Let that concept settle in your mind. Apotheosis, the transition from a creature of magic and bone into a being of pure divinity. She wants to shed the rotting cage of her lichdom and ascend to the pantheon of the gods. But how? How does a creature of death become a creator of life? How does a parasite become a patron? She has turned her gaze downward, down through the floors of her palace, down through the obsidian foundations, down into the rock that holds the city up. She looks at the dead god. Her recent attempts utilize the latent power of the dead god that empowers Tunarath. We spoke of the one in the void, the petrified husk upon which the city is built. To the citizens, it is ground. To the Queen, it is a battery. Imagine the audacity of this plan. This being was once a god. It had worshippers. It had domains. It had a spark of the infinite fire of creation. Even in death, even in stone, some echo of that power remains. It is trapped in the marrow of the petrified bones. It hums in the ley lines of the fossilized nerves. Vlaakith is attempting to siphon this power. Picture her in her innermost sanctum, surrounded by arcane machinery and runic circles drawn in blood and diamond dust. She is weaving a spell that is not meant to be cast, a spell to transfer the residual divinity of a dead titan into her own withered frame. She is trying to jumpstart her own godhood, using the corpse of another. But there is a fundamental flaw in her logic, a jagged crack in her grand design. Nishajal. Though she works tirelessly, it seems unlikely that the combination of a dead god and a Githyanki Lich would somehow yield a living god. Think of the ingredients: death and undeath, stagnation and decay. Can you build a living fire out of cold ash and dry ice? The energies are wrong. The metaphysics are twisted. She is trying to force a square peg into a round hole, but she is using a hammer made of dark magic to do it. The universe is silent on whether such a thing is even possible. The other gods, Tiamat, Mistra, Shah, they watch, perhaps with amusement, perhaps with disgust, but they do not intervene. They know that the path to divinity is paved with the shattered souls of those who tried and failed. But let us assume, for a moment, that she could succeed. Let us assume she finds the final key, drains the dead god dry, and rises as the goddess of the Githyanki. This is where the tragedy truly deepens. Because if Vlaakith succeeds, she does not save her people. She dooms herself. If Vlaakith finds a way to complete her apotheosis, Githyanki society would be thrown into disarray. You might ask, why? Wouldn't they love a goddess of their own? Wouldn't they rejoice to have their queen become divine? No. Githyanki, you must remember the history we spoke of in the beginning. The trauma of the Mind Flayers. The Githyanki were enslaved by beings with godlike powers. Their entire culture is built on the rejection of servitude. They bow to Vlaakith as a commander. Ninja Stowe. As a queen, as a descendant of Gith, they follow her because she leads the war. But a god requires worship. A god requires the surrender of the soul. To a Githyanki, a god is simply the highest rank of slaver. Obedience to superior goes only so far. So, if Vlaakith becomes a god, she crosses a line that cannot be uncrossed. In many of the Githyanki's eyes, she would cease to be their leader and become their oppressor. She would become no better than an illithid elder brain, demanding absolute mental and spiritual submission. Many Githyanki would align themselves against her for being an enemy of Gith. They would see her ascension not as a victory, but as the ultimate betrayal of Gith's dream of freedom. Gith fought to break chains. Vlaakith is forging the heaviest chain of all, religion. Instead of following her as a loyal subordinate, they would hunt her. The silver swords that once defended her would be turned toward her throne. The dragons might even hesitate, sensing the shift in the wind. And so, another civil war seems inevitable. If Vlaakith succeeds, and likely, even if she fails and her plan becomes known. If the people find out she is trying to become a god, if they find out she is draining the city's foundation and eating their heroes to fuel a blasphemous transformation, they will rise up. The illusion of the revered queen will shatter, leaving only the tyrant. So Vlaakith, of course, hides this plan, like she hides so many other aspects of her nature. She is trapped in a prison of her own making. She desires the one thing that will turn her people against her. She is working toward a goal that will destroy her empire the moment she achieves it. It is the ultimate irony. The paranoia that drives her to seek absolute power is the very thing that ensures she can never truly enjoy it. She sits on the throne, feeling the hum of the dead god beneath her, knowing that she is walking a razor's edge. One slip, one leaked secret, one failed ritual, and the silence of Tunarath will be broken by the roar of revolution. But secrets in the astral plane have a way of getting out. Whispers carry far in the void. And there are other forces at play, ancient forces, forces that have been waiting in the wings, watching the Lich Queen's slow descent into madness. The majority of the Githyanki are loyal to her still, as the rightful commander, yes, but cracks are forming in the obsidian. There is a name we have not spoken yet, a name that challenges the very legitimacy of her rule, a name that links back to the mother of rebellion herself. Vlaakith claims to be the successor. She claims the throne is hers. But what if there was another? What if the lineage of Gith did not end in the hells? The tremors in the city are getting stronger. The dead god is restless, and out in the void, something is coming. The silence of the astral plane is a deception. We have spent this time drifting through the silver void, believing that the only sound is the beating of our own hearts, or the distant cry of a dragon. We have walked the streets of Tunara, listening to the susurrus of the obsidian palace, believing that the only threat to the Lich Queen comes from her own decaying mind. But silence, as any good thief or assassin will tell you, is often just a breath held before a scream. Come, settle deeper into your rest. Let the image of the skeletal queen and her dead god fade slightly into the background. We need to look past the palace. We need to look past the city. We need to look at the cracks in the history itself. We have been told a story. It is the story that every Githyanki child is told in the creches. It is the story carved into the walls of the capital. The story goes like this. Gith, the savior, went to the 9 hells to save her people. She did not return, but before she vanished, she named her advisor Vlaakith. As her successor, she passed the torch willingly. She entrusted the fate of the revolution to the wizard who stood by her side. And so, Vlaakith I took the crown to carry on Gith's legacy of conquest, and the Githyanki have followed that line ever since, believing that their service to the Queen is service to Gith herself. But what if that is a lie? What if the foundation of the entire empire is built not just on a dead god, but on a stolen birthright? In the deep lore, beneath the official proclamations of the Lich Queen, there is a whisper of another name, a name that is forbidden in Tunarath, a name that, if spoken too loudly, brings the Shar'ai inquisitors running with their blades drawn. Orpheus, the prince of the comet. To understand the terror that grips Vlaakith, the paranoia drives her to eat the souls of her own warriors. We must understand that she is not just afraid of potential rivals. She is afraid of a specific rival. She is afraid of the one person who can point a finger at her and say, "Thief." Orpheus is the son of Gith, the true heir, the blood of the mother. Legend tells us that when Gith made her pact with Tiamat and vanished, she did not leave Vlaakith in charge. The transition was not peaceful. There was a power struggle. Vlaakith I, the cunning wizard, seized power. She proclaimed herself queen. Nabo, Inde, Etiel. But Orpheus the son stood against her. He claimed that Vlaakith was a usurper. He claimed that she had betrayed Gith, perhaps even orchestrating her disappearance into the hells to seize the throne for herself. This was the first civil war, a war that the history books in Tunarath have erased. Orpheus and his honor guard fought against the tyranny of the first Vlaakith. They fought for the true dream of Gith, a dream of freedom, not of a new empire built on slavery and dragonfire. Wow! But they lost. Itine, and Iman, and Tawetitu. Orpheus was defeated, but he was not killed, because you cannot simply kill a legend, and you cannot easily destroy the son of the savior. He was imprisoned, locked away in an artifact of immense power, a prison that floats through the astral sea, hidden from sight, guarded by the lies of a dynasty, the Astral Prism. For thousands of years, while the Vlaakith line rose and fell, while the current Lich Queen performed her dark rituals and descended into madness, Orpheus has been screaming silently in the dark. And here is the twist. Here is the depth of Vlaakith's cruelty. She uses him, just as she uses the dead god beneath her city as a battery. She uses the imprisoned prince as a shield. Orpheus inherited his mother's psionic resistance. He has a unique power to disrupt the hive mind of the Illithids. It is his power, channeled through the prism, that protects the Githyanki from the instant domination of the Elder Brains. The Githyanki believe this protection comes from Vlaakith. They believe she is the shield. Without her, they believe they couldn't survive. The text tells us they fear enslavement by another race once again. She has taken the credit for the prince's power. She keeps her people safe, using the very man she imprisoned, claiming his strength as her own. It is the ultimate plagiarism. But now, the prism has been found. The secret is leaking out. We spoke earlier of how Vlaakith's madness is growing. We spoke of the tremors that shake the city. These are not just the random firings of a decaying brain. This is fear, the distinct, icy fear of a criminal who hears the police knocking at the door. Recent events that have shaken the multiverse and touched the city of Baldur's Gate, have brought the Prince of the Comet back into play. The artifact has changed hands. The silence of the prison has been broken, and the cracks in Githyanki society are widening into chasms. We know that the majority of the Githyanki are loyal to her still as the rightful commander. But for how long? There are whispers of a faction known as the Shasal Ku, Githyanki and Githzerai, working together, dreaming of reunification, dreaming of the one sky. They look to the story of Orpheus, not as a myth, but as a prophecy. And closer to home, within the military hierarchy itself, doubt is spreading. Imagine being a supreme commander of the Githyanki. You have served Vlaakith for centuries. You have sent your soldiers to die in her name. You have sent your best warriors to the Ascension, never to see them again. And then you learn the truth. You learn that the Queen is a leech. You learn that the true heir is in chains. This is the story of Kithrak Voss, and others like him. The most loyal servants are turning. The lickspittles and sycophants remain. Yes, but the true warriors, the ones with honor, are facing a crisis of faith. Vlaakith knows this. This explains the intensity of the Shura Inquisitions. This explains why she executes any she suspects of treachery. She is not just looking for malcontents, she is looking for believers of the comet. And she is trying to stomp out a wildfire with a boot made of bone. Her reaction to what she fears is to master or destroy it. She cannot master Orpheus. He is the one thing she cannot corrupt. So she must destroy him. But she cannot destroy him, because she needs his power to protect her people from the Mind Flayers. If she kills him, the shield drops, and the Illithids return. If she lets him live, he might escape and take her throne. It is a deadlock, a checkmate in slow motion. And so, she tries to become a god. The Apotheosis project we discussed, the draining of the dead god, is her desperate attempt to escape this trap. If she becomes a deity, she no longer needs Orpheus. If she becomes a deity, she is above the claims of lineage. Who cares about a prince when you are a goddess? She is racing against time. She is racing against the inevitable discovery of her lies. The text warns us that if Vlaakith's plans become known, or if she succeeds, another civil war seems inevitable. We are standing on the precipice of that war right now. War. Down. Sunentus yisor. Omniarstrao. Yachiyu. The modern schism is not just about politics. It is about the soul of the Githyanki people. It is a choice between the comforting lie of the Lich Queen and the dangerous truth of the prince. On one side, you have the stability of Tunarath. You have the red dragons, the silver swords, the ordered ranks of the military. You have the queen who has ruled for thousands of years. On the other side, you have the unknown. You have a prince who has been in solitary confinement for aeons. You have the chaos of revolution. But the Githyanki are not a people who shy away from conflict. They were born in the fires of rebellion. Gith did not teach them to be safe. She taught them to be free. As the tremors shake the obsidian palace again, Vlaakith sits on her throne. Her emerald eyes burn with hate. She clutches the scepter of Ephilomen until her knuckles crack. She knows that the prince is awake. She knows that her greatest general Voss has turned his back on her. She knows that the adventurers from the material plane are meddling in affairs they do not understand. She is cornered. And a cornered lich is the most dangerous creature in the multiverse. She will sacrifice everything to stay in power. She will eat every soul into Narath. She will burn every world in the material plane. She will tear the astral sky asunder before she gives up her crown. And by ordering an increase in raids, by tightening her grip, she is trying to project strength. But it is the strength of a frantic animal. The 157th, Vlaakith's iron grip on her people, has left the Githyanki in a precarious and almost tragic position. They are caught between a monster and a martyr. As we look out over the silver void, we can almost see the comet striping across the sky. It is a herald of change. It is a herald of blood. The eternal reign is ending. The only question is, what will be left when the dust settles? Will the Githyanki be free? Or will they be extinguished, casualties of a war between a mother's ghost, a son's vengeance, and a lich's greed? The story is reaching its climax. The threads of history, betrayal, and magic are pulling tight. We have one final stop on this journey. We must look at the future. We must look at the inevitability of the fall. We have arrived at the end of our journey. Ishtar. Ishisa tenants. Come, for one last time. Find that place of absolute stillness. Let the heavy velvet curtain of the night close around you. The journey through the astral plane has been long, and we have seen terrible things. We have seen the birth of an empire in the blood of a slave revolt. We have seen the rise of a dynasty forged in dragonfire. We have looked into the dead eyes of a queen who refuses to die. Now, the mists are gathering. The silver light of the void is dimming. We stand at the precipice of the future, looking down into the dark. Breathe in the silence, and breathe out the fear. We have examined the Lich Queen from every angle. We have dissected her history, her anatomy, her city, and her madness. But every story must have an ending, even for a creature who claims to be eternal. Vlaakith, the 157th, believes she has stopped the wheel of time. She believes that by becoming a lich, by freezing her body in a state of undeath, and by living in a plane where time does not flow, she has conquered the inevitable. But history is a river. You can build a dam, you can divert the flow, but eventually the water will rise. And when the dam breaks, the devastation is absolute. The Lich Queen's iron grip on her people has left the Githyanki in a precarious and almost tragic position. This is the reality we must confront. For all the pomp and circumstance of Tunarath, for all the red dragons roaring in the sky, the empire is hollow. It is a shell, eaten away from the inside by the very woman who claims to hold it together. By surrounding herself with sycophants and fostering a culture of mediocrity, she has stifled ambition. Think of what this means for a race like the Githyanki. They are not farmers, they are not poets, they are warriors. Their entire cultural identity is based on the pursuit of excellence, on the sharpening of the self. Gith told them to be strong, so they would never be slaves again. But Vlaakith demands they be weak, so she can remain queen. She has ensured her own supremacy at the cost of her people's former greatness. She has traded their future for her present. She has clipped the wings of her own dragons. The best and brightest are eaten in the ritual of ascension. The leaders who remain are the corrupt and the cowardly. And so, as madness consumes her, the whispers grow louder in Tunarath. You can hear it in the barracks. You can hear it in the creches on the material plane. Doubts are casting shadows over her eternal reign. The Githyanki are slow to change. Their loyalty is hardwired by millennia of tradition. But they are not blind. They see the corruption. They see the stagnation. They see the prince of the comet rising in the distance like a bad omen. There are two paths ahead, and both of them seem inevitable. Let us walk down the first path, the path of the Queen's death. Imagine the moment. Perhaps it comes at the hands of a band of adventurers, wielding weapons forged to slay the undead. Perhaps it comes from the blade of Kithrak Foss, the loyal knight who finally remembered his honor. Perhaps it comes from the prince, Orpheus, breaking his chains and unleashing a psionic storm that shatters the obsidian palace. Her death will mark the end of the Vlaakith line. Remember, she has no heirs. She broke the chain. There is no Vlaakith 158 waiting in the wings. There is no daughter trained in statecraft. There is only the void. This would mean the end of the Gith lineage. The name that has held the people together since the dawn of their freedom would vanish. The symbolic link to Gith would be severed. For a people who rely so heavily on hierarchy and tradition, this would be a psychological apocalypse. Who rules when the queen is dust? Who commands the dragons? Without a designated successor, the warlords would turn on each other. The supreme commanders of the various armies, stationed in their fortresses across the multiverse, would rush back to Tunarath to claim the throne. The city on the dead god would become a battlefield. The red dragons would tear each other apart in the skies. The silver swords would drink the blood of kin. This brings us to the second path. Her relentless hunger for control will ignite a devastating civil war among the Githyanki. Even if she is not killed by an outsider, Her own actions are driving her people to this cliff. If she succeeds in her apotheosis, half the empire will revolt against the false god. If she fails and her secrets are revealed. Turn. The soul devouring. The imprisonment of Orpheus. The empire will fracture. Brother will fight brother. Pressure will fight crash. The discipline that makes them the most terrifying army in the multiverse will implode. And while they are fighting each other, who is watching? The Mind Flayers. In Mind Flayers, the Illithids have long memories. They have been waiting in the dark, nursing their wounds, rebuilding their nautiloids. They watch the Githyanki with a cold, alien hunger. They know that the only thing keeping them in check is the unity of the Githyanki war machine and the power of the prism Vlaakith stole. If the Githyanki fall into civil war, the Mind Flayers will return. They will sweep out of the Underdark, they will descend from the stars, and this time there will be no Gith to save them. Vlaakith knows this. Deep down, in the rot of her paranoid mind, she must know this. But she does not care. Yoni. In her quest for godhood, Vlaakith may have secured the throne for longer than any Vlaakith before her. She has bought herself time. She has bought herself thousands of years of dominance. But, in the process, she has doomed her people to a fate as bleak as the astral void itself. This is the ultimate tragedy of the Lich Queen. She is not just a tyrant, she is a cancer. A tyrant might build a strong wall to protect their property. A cancer kills the host. She has taken a people who were defined by their resistance to slavery, and she has enslaved them to a lie. She has taken a people who were defined by their will to survive, and she has set them on a course for extinction. As we drift away from Tunarath, watching the silhouette of the dead god recede into the silver mist, we are left with a heavy heart. We see the Githyanki warrior standing on the battlements, looking out at the nothingness. He believes he is free. He believes he is strong. He believes that when he dies, he will go to paradise. He does not know that he is already in a cage. Vet's rule is a blade with two edges. The same power that shields her people is the chain that binds them. In the Queen's shadow, greatness is a cage, and loyalty is a shackle that tightens with each breath. The story of the Lich Queen is a warning. It is a warning about the corrupting nature of power. It is a warning about the danger of trading freedom for security. It is a warning that sometimes the monster you create to protect you becomes the monster that devours you. The silence of the astral plane reclaims us. The story is told. The lore is laid bare. The queen sits on her throne. The dead god sleeps beneath her. The prince screams in his prism, and the Githyanki wait for the end. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the dark heart of the astral sea. I hope the silver void was not too cold, and that you found some comfort in the unraveling of these secrets. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the lore of Dungeons and Dragons, and if you wish to explore more of the hidden corners of the multiverse with me, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. It helps our own little community grow in the vastness of the internet. Until next time, keep your silver sword sharp, and be careful who you trust with your soul. Sleep well. Endi. Now, Dano, Unshati.